Polytopia recently got updated to version 108, and the Aquarion tribe got another rework. Poly Champions has all the details on how this update affects Aquarion units and their technology, tips on how to play the tribe now, plus watch until the end for a look at the new swamp skin featuring giant toads and crocodile riders. Okay, let's review the latest Aquarion update. Let's begin with the fact that Aquarion now starts with 2 fish around the capital. That means that the fishing tech will most likely be your first technology. As a water-based tribe, this makes sense for Aquarion. The other smart thing about getting fishing as your first technology with this update is that it leads to 2 of the most important things on the Aquarion tech tree: aquaculture and deep water movement. That's because aquaculture has a key difference now: atolls. That's right, atolls are now in aquaculture. This may have the biggest impact on Aquarion, more than even speed bubbles. We'll get to those in a minute. But atolls and aquaculture takes Aquarion's 2 most important economic techs and combines them into one. Atolls to add population to the capital, and aqua farms to grow in most cities on the coast. Needless to say, this tech is now absolutely amazing. Talk about an economic buff. On a sufficiently watery map, fishing plus the aquaculture tech is enough for a capital crab if you can connect a few of your cities with an atoll and are lucky enough to have aqua farms. Maybe get a second crab in another city with the Park of Fortune monument. On maps with more land, like continents or lakes, going fishing first can hinder economic growth, since there's only those 2 obligatory tiles with fish next to your capital. For maps with land, you probably want to start with organization. The org branch is not as strong as the fishing one. Defenders and farms are definitely not on par with aqua farms and atolls and deep water movement. But having access to fruit and farms in the late game water maps can help. Basically, the entire fishing tree is amazing for Aquarion, whereas the organization side, the main thing you want is just org itself. However, in the late game or high economy matches, the organization tree with farms becomes more interesting. Also, the fertilize is a great ability in high income games. It's just hidden in a tech that you won't get very often. Fish and aqua farms are pretty much the only resources you'll find in lost cities that come from the deep water ruins. Yes, you heard correctly. Those cities that come from ocean ruins rise from the depths with resources around them. So now, instead of being stuck at level 2, lost cities now have high economic potential. All right, I know you've been waiting for this. Let's talk about bubbles. You get bubbles from the Waterways tech. Units with a bubble get a speed boost, similar to the boost from a Cymanti Shaman. Bubbles form around any amphibious unit that moves to a flooded tile. Newly created units do not start with a bubble. They need to move to a flooded tile to get that bubble. However, if the dry tile an amphibious unit is standing on becomes flooded, then the unit does get a bubble. This can happen a couple ways. If a unit floods the tile itself and gets a bubble, same as if a crab moves onto a dry tile, auto floods it and gets a bubble. This also works if a pufferfish floods a dry tile and an amphibious unit is already on it. Units which are pushed out of cities can get a bubble if they're pushed onto a flooded tile. Remember, the bubble appears on units after they've moved onto the flooded tile. This can lead to some cute combat interactions where an amphibian kills another unit, gets a bubble, and then bounces away to safety with the help of the new bubble. And how do you lose a bubble? There are 2 ways. If a unit with a bubble moves onto dry land, or if it's attacked. A retaliation attack also counts as an attack that will pop your unit's bubble. Bubbles have so many uses in battle and in exploration. First, let's look at the battle tactics. On flooded land engagements against land units, the bubbles mean that at least within your own territory, you have some movement advantage. Not as much as riders get on their home turf, but enough to set up a decent defense against those attacking hordes. Also, bubbles stay on a unit when it moves into shallow or deep water, so you can pick up a bubble on a flooded tile and keep it for the naval combat. Bubbles let amphibians hit a juggernaut from farther away and bounce back out of their range. Bubbles allow amphibians to play from a safer distance against rammers too. If an amphibian in a bubble can kill without taking retaliation, the amphibian can bounce to a more distant spot, maybe even getting a siege. Bubbles make archers a whole lot more valuable, both on land and on sea. Bubbled archers combined with jellies or tridents also make a deadly combination. However, even with bubbles, mermaid archers are mainly limited by the fact that they're in the hunting branch of the tech tree, and the hunting technology is not great for Aquarion. But don't let that stop you from training mermaid archers if you already happen to have picked up hunting earlier. Crabs with bubbles are very good. If you can clear a city with some other units, you can then move in a crab from 3 tiles away to siege and hold. Finally, bubbles mean that tridentians now no longer get outranged by anyone. Tridents in a bubble can move in to reach more targets from farther away. In addition to giving more range in battles, bubbles can greatly speed up your exploration, allowing you to get to ruins or villages before your opponent. If you get an explorer that shows a village that's currently 3 tiles away from a warrior, buying bubbles that turn means you can reach the village next turn instead of in 2 turns. However, bubbles require consideration as to when to get the technology during your turn. Make sure you get the tech before moving your units. If you move your units at the start of a turn, then get the tech, those units will not get the bubbles. Next, let's talk about the changes to 3 of the Aquarion units: the shark, the crab, and the jelly. The shark now has 3.5 attack, up from 3.0. This means a shark can one-shot an undefended warrior. So now sharks hit harder, but they're still pretty easy to kill. The crab defense went down from 5 to 4. This is really the only nerf in this patch. Before, the crab was incredibly tanky, even more so with aquatism. It was just super frustrating to deal with. With the 5 defense and escape, we had previously ranked the crab as the strongest super unit in the game. A link to our unit ranking video is in the description. But with the current change, a giant now once again comes out ahead in a direct confrontation. The giant does more damage to the crab than it takes in retaliation. On the flip side, if a crab attacks, the damage and retaliation is equal. Plus, the crab can subsequently dance out of a giant's range, so it's not like the crab is completely out of tools. Also, if you consider that this patch makes the Aquarion economy stronger with atolls and aquaculture, it's easier and faster to get crabs now. Finally, let's talk about jellies, and that now they have a regular attack. It's not a huge change, especially in open water combat, except that it makes it a little bit easier to get your damage in. It's important to mention that if your jelly attacks and kills a unit, it moves onto that unit's space and subsequently shocks all the units around their new tile. On the other hand, the damage you deal from a regular attack is the same as the damage you deal from shocking. So if you can kill a unit by attacking them, you could also kill it by swimming next to them. The coolest thing that jellies have with the attack is that a jelly can attack a unit in a city, move in, and siege. Jelly sieges are hard to break, and this change makes it much easier to get a jelly into the city. Once a jelly is sieging a city, it's very hard to kill that jelly and save your city. And now let's take a closer look at the Forgotten skin. The terrain has a different color, a green swamp with dark green mountains. Instead of mermaids, the warrior units are called squids. The animals are called crocas. The fruit are boglilum. Toads replace crabs. Instead of jellies, we have octos. Sharks are still sharks. All the monuments look the same as the regular Aquarion ones, except for the Eye of God. Oh, and the toad makes a ribbit sound when you tap it. As with the other skins, the Forgotten skin does not change gameplay, other than if you're in a mirror match playing another Aquarion using the regular skin, you can differentiate where your terrain ends and the normal Aquarion starts. You can watch us test out the update and the new skin in our recent live stream. A link is in the description. Okay, that's what's new with the recent Polytopia update to Aquarion. Huge thanks to these Poly Champions League members for their help with this video. What do you think of the rework? Drop us a comment. Let us know if we missed something. Join our league. Come play Polytopia with us on our Discord. A link to the Discord server is in the description. Take care. See you on the next one.